Okay, hi everyone. I think we'll get started now, and if there are any latecomers, they can join in when they arrive. So, welcome to today's session on being community researchers. I'm Khalid, joined today by Elizabeth and Adrian as well. So Adrian will keep an eye on our Q&A, and Elizabeth will pop up towards the end to have a little discussion about the plans. But we'll get started. So just before we do, just go over some housekeeping. Some of you will be familiar with these if you've joined our online sessions before, but today we do have quite a lot to get through. So you will also notice that you are on mute and your videos are turned off. This will just prevent any background noise, but if you do, we do want you to communicate with us, so please do use our chat box. If you do have any questions, put them through to me via the Q&A box. We'll take a couple of breaks to go through any questions as well. So if you maybe join us via laptops, smartphones, tablets, all of which are fine. At the end, you might find having a smartphone nearby easy as well, but not compulsory. We will also share what we are going through today, so there's no need to make notes either. Treat this place like you would in a real meeting. You know, be considerate, be conscious of what you post in the chat box. And we are working from home, so there is always the possibility of a parcel or some distractions. I have tried to minimize this today. Okay, so today's objectives then. So what we'll be looking to do then today is discuss the importance of research and how it can influence the work that you are doing. We'll talk through a few different research methodologies and ways to collect data. We'll have a chat about the importance of ethics in research and evaluation. And once you have collected all that data, we'll talk about how to analyze the data, report what you found, and also disseminate what you have found. So what you can see then is that there is a lot to get through today. So I think it's a good idea to start with a couple of warm-up. So in the form of icebreakers. So using the comments box, if you want to let me know, are you a morning person or a night owl? So if you type into the comments box, are you a morning person or a night owl? Okay, some interesting points coming through. So I can see there's an even split at the moment. So morning person going twice and night owl going twice. I myself am a night owl, so I think the majority of us therefore are night owls. Interesting to see that. Next up, have you ever left a 1-star review online? So yes or no. Again, through the comments box, let's see what you have to say towards that. Interesting, Elizabeth. Of course, Adrian, constructively always. Okay. I personally haven't. I'm always conscious of the fact that my review might lead to a business closing, so I always try and avoid it. So it's quite interesting that. And then just finally, what is your earliest memory of the internet? quite interested about what you have to say about this one. Ask Jeeves, how long ago was that? Fair enough. Oh, interesting, Mina. I think my earliest memory was having to disconnect the telephone in order to use the internet. And we used to have this massive router, it was like this big. And then I just used to play games on Miniclip and CBBC games. But interesting that. So I feel that we're all warmed up here. So if we go into the nitty gritty. So today we're going to talk about research, but what is, before we do though, let's talk about me. So I'm the research and evaluation worker here at Cancer, form part of the Quality and Innovation Hub. My background includes both an undergraduate and a postgraduate degree in psychology. My research background has taken the form of interviews, questionnaires, as well as other methods across various disciplines from stress, mental health, community and societal research. So I've mentioned research there. I'm quite interested to see what do you think our research is. So using the comments box again, if you want to type in what you think research is, so you can use a single word or no more than a few words. Yep, Elizabeth, that is pretty much accurate. Finding out information for a particular purpose, definitely agree. Looking for, finding out, analyze, yep, again. Research is definitely fun, absolutely. Just give a few more seconds on this. Okay, I think if I'm thinking about research personally, I'm thinking about evidence. If I was using a single word to sum up research, it would be evidence. So research is, for me, finding answers to the questions that we ask and supporting our answers with evidence. So every day we would see, we would hear and read things based on so-called common sense, such as men are better at driving than women, or women are more caring than men. However, these beliefs are often based on prejudice, speculation, misinformation. So unless we have evidence from good quality research, we cannot make any claims for or against these statements. So here I do point out that research is systematic. However, it's not boring. It's far from it. It is fun. Research is an opportunity to learn. It's an opportunity to learn about yourself and others. It's not always in a classroom or a webinar like today. There's immense possibilities when it comes to research, and it is what you make of research. So here's a quote from Albert Einstein, something that he supposedly said, that play is the highest form of research. Okay. And when it comes to research, anyone can conduct research. So the government may collect research to get ideas about voting intentions. Your local supermarket may collect research to understand shopping habits. But also, you may collect research. As grantees, you will need to do research in order to evaluate the effectiveness of your work. If you have arranged any cancer awareness sessions, for example, you will need to do research in order to understand, whether that session is proving to be effective, whether it's proving to be engaging. And when we conduct research, we have two ways we can look into research. One being primary data collection, and the second being secondary data collection. Generally, primary data is about collecting information yourself from the horse's mouth. So that could be conducting interviews with members of your community, whereas secondary data is using data collected by someone else to inform your decision making. So that could be something like visiting the Cancer Research UK website to get figures around the number of people who are surviving from cancer each year. Now, you may use secondary research to base your cancer awareness session. So, for example, you may see online that someone arranged a unique, creative cancer awareness session. And as such, you yourself ran this within your community. Now, the people who originally ran this said that this was effective, this was engaging. But how do you know that it was effective within your community, with the people you interact with? And that's where your primary data collection will come into play. So you will answer these questions, you will ask them via interviews, for example, or questionnaires. Was this effective? Was this engaging? And as such, these two methods should be considered as complementary. So one may form the other, one may lead to the other. Okay. So if we continue with the previous example, in that we want to do our own research to understand the effectiveness of, say, a cancer awareness session that we have run within our community, then we need to plan this research. How will we actually go about collecting this research? And the first step would be identifying our aim. So the aim is, what do we hope to achieve? What do we hope to find out? Okay, where are you hoping to find out? Why do you need to know this? Do you, for example, you may have organized an event to raise awareness about cancer, and your aim is to understand whether this was successful, whether this led to any behavioral changes, or you might want to know, can I improve this? So that begins with your aim. After which, you need to figure out how you will collect your research, your data, in order to answer your aim or accomplish your aim. This will be dependent on that aim. So for example, if you want to know how many people you are engaging with that are from a BAME background, then you're more likely to use a quantitative method, whereas if you want to know their stories and experiences whilst they had engaged with you, then maybe a qualitative method is better. And generally, and we will discuss this in a bit more details in a little while, quantitative research is concerned with quantity or measurements of a particular phenomenon. So an example is how many people signed up as Answer Cancer champions after this session. Whereas qualitative data, that is generally in non-numerical form. So that can be personal narratives or stories or accounts of experiences. So that is what motivated them to sign up as an Answer Cancer champion. And then we also have the mixed design, so that could be where you combine the two. So we're using a quantitative method to identify how many people signed up, and then the qualitative method would be why did those people sign up. Now, each of these, they do have their own strengths, but they also have some limitations. And the choice of design will be ultimately based on what you are looking to investigate. For example, do you need to know how many people attended the session? Or do you want to know about people's experiences? So it is ultimately dependent on what you hope to achieve, but also got to take into practicality. Is it possible for you to actually conduct qualitative research or quantitative research? And in regards to those, we will I'll discuss a bit more about them in a little while. Okay. Now, before we conduct any research, there's one principle that we need to always be aware of, and that is ethics. So I want you to have a watch of this video just for a minute and a half, and then tell me whether you think this was ethical or unethical using the comments box, please.
Guys of a motivational seminar, our accomplice provided many wrong answers. Each protest was coordinated to a particular shock voltage on the generator, and his responses were played via a CD.
That's wrong, 150 volts. The correct answer is Captain Shoe. Cup. That's wrong. 225 volts.
Ow! Take it off! I've had enough of this!
He's in a lot of pain.
Continue, please.
But he's not comfortable.
We must continue to the end of the experiment. Whether the learner likes it or not, he has to go on until he's learnt the words correctly.
Okay. Forest. That's wrong, 240 volts. Are you sure this is not causing any lasting damage? He sounds like he's in a lot of pain.
Well, the shocks might be painful, they're not harmful.
What does that mean, though? They're not harmful. Sorry, I'm not getting you. When you say that they might be painful but not harmful,
They cause no long-term damage.
okay, so what does that mean? That it doesn't leave any scars?
It causes no damage.
That seems very cold and calculated to me. This doesn't seem like a very. Anyway, golden.
Okay, so in regards to that, so that is an experiment. So it was a replication of a study conducted by Stanley Milgram, and it was replicated by Darren Brown. Now, what do you think? Do you think that was ethical, or do you think that was unethical? So if you type into your comments, into the comments box, just so I get a sense of what you thought of that video. Yep. Definitely, wowza. It is very unethical. in terms of this, it's unlikely that you will do anything like this. You know, an experiment seems highly unlikely within community-based research. Nevertheless, the principles will still apply. And regarding this was highly unethical. So in this experiment, 2 participants, one of whom was an actor, was separated into 2 rooms, and the test subject, so this was the individual in the video that we saw then, read a series of questions to the actor, and each time this actor purposefully got the question wrong, the participant administered an electric shock to the actor, or so he thought. Now, as a result, you know, he did look to the research and say, is it okay to carry on? And as a result of what the researcher said, he continued. But you are all right, this was unethical. And the reasons why it was unethical was a number of factors. Okay, so what we can see is ethics refers to your conduct that is required when you're doing your research. But what we can see is a number of things makes this unethical. So if you think about it, was confidentiality maintained? The answer to that is no. Why? Because it was broadcast on to the nation on Channel 4. We could see his name, we could see where he worked, what his job title was. Was any consent obtained? Well, the answer to that was yes, but he didn't know what the study was about. He consented to a different study, so there was no real consent gained. And that goes hand in hand with deception. This participant was deceived. He didn't know what he was taking part in. Was there any harm caused? Well, if we can't know for sure, but it looks like that there was certainly some distress, which is considered harm. Was he treated with respect? That's debatable. But all of the D's that I've listed here should be at the forefront of any research that you carry out. So you should maintain confidentiality. You should obtain informed consent, so your participant is fully aware of what they're being asked to do. Whatever the research is, whether it's a questionnaire, an interview, they should be aware of what their involvement in it partakes. You should not deceive your participants. Treat them with respect. Remember, they are voluntary. They're giving up their time to take part in your research. And in line with that, as they are voluntary, do not force them to continue. You know, if they want to withdraw, that's absolutely fine. If they wanted to not answer a question, that too is absolutely fine. And of course, being respectful is probably at the very top. But also calm. Now, with those two, harm and respect, we got to consider if we're doing research around community attitudes towards cancer, for example, that is quite a sensitive topic. Whoever your participant might be, might find those questions quite sensitive. As such, you should always be conscious of that fact. Make them aware. They don't have to answer any questions that they don't feel comfortable answering, or they don't need to continue if they no longer feel comfortable. So always consider ethics as the guiding when you're doing your research and evaluation. And when we talk about consent, you know, you have your consent form. Some of you may have seen this if you participate in any of the telephone interviews that I've or my colleague Niga has conducted. So what we always do is send out an information sheet that tells you everything that you need to know about your involvement in this research. So it tells you why you've been invited, what your research will involve, and it tells you about your rights, including your right to not take part. And the consent form confirms that you've read this information sheet that you are fully aware of what is being asked of you during this research. Okay, and sometimes you all can also have a debrief at the end. Now this can be verbal or you can have it in writing, and that pretty much confirms everything that's been done in the study, and it informs your participant of their rights following the research as well. And it's good practice to have a debrief as well. You just say thank you, just to say thanks for taking part in this research. Also, always remember, give your research participants an opportunity to answer any questions. Make everything as clear as possible, and answer check to see if they are happy with your answers. Okay. So that's ethics. So if we look into at the research methods a bit more, so we came across these just a little while ago. So we'll discuss quantitative methods first. So the way to remember which method is which is quantitative, so quantity. And this research is about numerical forms of data. It's about ranking your data or categorizing something. So we spoke about the example before that this could be the total number of people who attended the cancer awareness session, or the total number of Answer Cancer champions that you've signed up, percentage of people from an LGBT background, percentage of carers that you've engaged with. And one of the most common forms of quantitative data collection is the questionnaire, which is an instrument consisting of a series of questions for the purpose of gathering information from your respondents. When it comes to a questionnaire, they can be carried out face-to-face, they can be carried out by the telephone, post, or online. Currently, it'll be unlikely that you will be able to do a face-to-face questionnaire. And the telephone questionnaire may not be suitable either. So there could be some biases where your respondent doesn't feel fully comfortable giving true and honest answers in front of you because it's no longer anonymous. Whereas a post, you can maintain that level of anonymity. However, it could be somewhat costly. So your online resources may be the best way to conduct or collect data via a questionnaire. Okay. And then when we are designing a questionnaire, we got to consider our questions quite carefully. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. A lot of the questions that you will want to ask may have already been asked. So look online, because a lot of questionnaires are free to use. Alternatively, you can also look towards Answer Cancer. We may be able to give our questionnaires that we use to you. So always look at your options there. A lot of these questions would have gone through a lot of rigorous testing to ensure that they are clear and that they are simple and easy to understand. Okay. Make sure when you consider your rating scale as well. So where you can have a 0 to 10 or a 1 to 10 rating scale, I would always advise having a 0 to 10. The reason for that is so you can have an absolute middle value. What that means is that you have 5 as the middle value, and then on one side of 5, there are 5 options that represents a positive score. And then the other side of 5, you have another 5 options, which represents a negative score. Often you will see questionnaires which is 1 being a positive score and 10 being a negative score, but more likely you'll see 10 being the positive score. It's up to you how you decide which is the positive, but be conscious of the fact people will likely expect 10 to be the positive value. So if they don't read the question fully, then they may not answer the question accurately. You can also have a yes or no response, so you can give them a statement and ask them, do they agree with the statement or not? So this cancer session was engaging, yes or no. Alternatively, the degree to which they agree with a statement. So the statement can be something like, the cancer awareness session was engaging. I strongly agree to I strongly disagree. So you got a number of options when it comes to your rating scales. You also got to be conscious of how many questions you have. There isn't a rule around this, and it's normally based on who your respondents will be. So if you feel your responses can do more questions, if they feel they have the ability to do so, then it is best to have as many questions as possible. Because if you have too few questions, you're not gathering as much information as you'd want. However, if you have far too many questions, then you have the possibility that people become fatigued and abandon the questionnaire altogether. And as we are looking at quantitative data, quantitative research, what we advise for a questionnaire is having closed questions. That way you can easily categorize your respondents to view the trends that appear in the data. Okay. And when it comes to designing the questionnaire, like I mentioned just a moment ago, the best option right now is likely doing an online questionnaire, and there are plenty of platforms available for that. So at Answer Cancer, we use SurveyMonkey, and a lot of these, like SurveyMonkey, have free features, although the paid features give you some added bonuses. But it's up to you which one you decide to use. Some people feel more comfortable with one versus another. It's absolutely up to you which you decide. They are all have their benefits. One of the positives around using questionnaires and largely quantitative data collections is that the findings can be easily viewed. You can see the trends, and then you can also transfer that into visual forms. So if I had a cancer awareness session and I wanted to know the ethnicity of people that engaged during the session, I've collected this information via a questionnaire, and I can see that the vast majority of people via this pie chart were white. And then we also have people, Asian and other ethnicities as well. Alternatively, we may send a questionnaire out before a session and then conduct one after a session to see changes over time. So here we have a cancer awareness session. We measured awareness, knowledge, and individuals' willingness to uptake on their cancer screening invites. Before the session, we can see that the awareness was lower, knowledge was lower, uptake was lower. However, following the session, we can see a visual trend that these have all increased. And this is a benefit of the quantitative methods. They are easy to see, although sometimes the data does appear similar. With numbers, it's always a lot easier to see differences. Okay. And also in this current climate, we are all familiar with Zoom. And Zoom does also offer you the ability to collect data, collect information via Zoom polls. So during a session, you can use the Zoom polls to collect some data. We can then be downloaded and then transferred into graphs for you to see your trends as well. Okay, so in regards to this then, I have been speaking for quite a while. So I think it'll be a good time to test your knowledge with a mini quiz. So again, if we use the comments box to answer these questions, and if we get your hands on your metaphorical buzzers to answer these. So first question, who supposedly said play is the highest form of research? So was it A, Elon Musk? Was it B, theoretical physicist Albert Einstein? Was it C, not a theoretical physicist Adrian Smith? Or D, Man United's leading goal scorer Wayne Rooney? So if you answer A, B, C, or D. Okay, so the answer was B. So I think you all got that right. Okay, second question. Research is about finding answers to the questions we ask. So A for true, B for false. Perfect. Okay, so I think everyone's answered that now. So I will hand over to Rocket the Raccoon to give us the answer here. That is true. Well done. I think everyone's got that right there. Okay, and next question. Ethics is important in research. So A for true, B for false. Yep, I think everyone is on the right lines here. So again, back to Rocket Raccoon for the answers. Yep, so that is also true. Well done there. Okay. Ethical research involves A, maintaining confidentiality, B, avoiding deception, C, being respectful, D, obtaining consent, or E, all of the above. So I think we got answers from everyone there now. So the answer was E. So yes, it was all of them. And then final question. Looking at data presented by Cancer Research UK about the number of people surviving from cancer each year is a form of what type of data? So was it A, primary data, B, secondary data, C, all of the above, or D, none of the above? Perfect. I think everyone's got that one right. So yes, the answer was B. So well done, because you were all right there. Okay. So I will check with Adrian now to see if there's any questions for me via the Q&A box.
Hi, Khaled. Hi, everyone. No questions for you yet. So just to encourage you, if you have any questions for Khaled, type them into your Q&A box. You can see what other people ask as well. If you like a question, give it a thumbs up. So as we go along, if you think of some questions, give it to us, because we do like questions.
Yep. Thanks, Adrian. Yeah, that's true. We definitely do like questions, so do get them through to me if you do have anything at all. Okay. So in terms of this then, we spoke about the quantitative research, and I think if I give you a little bit of a worked example now. So there's a group of researchers that use quantitative methods, including questionnaires, and they were interested in who is going for their smear tests and who are not. And what they found was that the age group 25 to 34-year-olds were the least likely to attend their cancer screenings or their smear test rather. Now, this is quite a significant finding, and it was quite easy to compare the trend, so versus other age groups. And what this can say is that the younger people were less likely to go than, say, an older group of women. However, I'm now making an assumption on age. I am saying that young people are less likely to go. However, like I said earlier, we would need evidence. So why are they not going? And that is a limitation of the quantitative methods that we've discussed today. Because although we find the facts and the figures and the trends, we don't find out the how and the why. So from this data, we don't truly know why they are missing their smear test. It could be many reasons we don't know the answer to via this research collection method. But there is a solution to this, and the solution is asking them. And that is where our qualitative methods will come into play. So in regards to qualitative research, the way to remember that is qualitative research is based on quality, so quality. And it's descriptive and it's interested in the why and the how. It's used to collect an understanding of experiences, values, opinions, behaviors, and motivations. The results of qualitative methods provide a deep understanding of how people perceive their world and how they act within communities. And I've listed a few qualitative research methods, and the most common ones would be interviews and group discussions. However, it's not to say that all the methods too, because notice that qualitative data can be more than just words or text. It can be photographs, videos, recordings, and these are all valuable methods to gather rich, detailed understanding of the people you interact with. So if we just have a discussion about some of these methods, and the most common one is interviews. Now, some of the people here today have participated in some telephone interviews with myself. Some of you may have participated with Niga, my colleague. In essence, interviews allows the respondent to talk in some depth, and it allows them to choose their own words, rather than, let's say, a questionnaire where they have to take one of maybe 4 or 5 options. Their responses are somewhat limitless, and this helps the researcher develop a real understanding of a person and how they perceive a situation. So an interviewer will be able to understand why someone goes to their cancer screenings and whereas someone chooses not to go to their cancer screening, and the individual can explain this and they can go into details, and you can probe and try and get as much information in regards to this. And the way we conduct interviews, normally this would be face-to-face. However, in the current climate, this might not be possible. So what has happened at Answer Cancer, we've done it via telephone. Alternatively, you can also use online platforms such as this, such as Zoom, or other similar platforms like Skype. And then, not too dissimilar from an interview, we also have our focus groups. So focus groups, just like an interview, has your interviewer or the person asking you the questions, but rather than there be just one person you're getting responses from, there's a group. So you bring a group of people, around 6 to 10 people together, and ask them the questions. One of the benefits of this is that you get a bit more data, a bit more information about people's experiences, their beliefs, opinions, motivations, and you can also see what beliefs are shared, and what is quite distinct within certain people. Normally, what happens is with a focus group, you do have an additional helper in a sense. You may keep notes or keep an eye on if someone is being quite quiet, or if someone wants to say something, they can almost direct, but they're for assistance really. And like with interviews, the current climate, doing a face-to-face focus group isn't possible, so you do have other platforms such as Zoom that will allow you to continue doing your focus groups. Okay, so just a few tips then in regards to your interviews or focus groups. So you have to consider how you will record your interviews. So if it's a one-to-one interview, you could record via keeping notes, but you also got to consider that it will be time consuming and you may miss out on information. So it probably is best to use something like a dictaphone or a voice recorder, and then produce a transcript of that interview in order for you to evaluate it. However, with a focus group, that may not be wise on the basis that you may not know who is actually saying what. So with a focus group, it may be better to actually record the video. Now with Zoom, you do have those features, and a lot of other online platforms have those features, so they are all available. Prepare a script. Now these scripts, there shouldn't be a rigorous application of these scripts. They are there for you to guide the interview more or less. So for example, you may have a question such as describe your experiences of this cancer awareness session. And then in the script, your second question may be something like, describe what you did following this session. Now, if someone says something quite interesting in the first question, such as, I thought the awareness session was engaging, however, I don't think it's important, then you should be delving into that in a bit more detail. So why don't you think that was important? And you sort of go with the flow there rather than rigorously applying your script and trying to keep it in order. Now with questionnaires, you've been advised to use closed questions. However, with an interview, we want to allow the interviewee to speak as much as possible. So it is best to use open-ended questions. And then encourage the interviewer to expand on their points as much as possible. So if they say something, you can always have ready-made prompts, such as, can you tell me a little bit more about this? Can you tell me a bit more about your experience? What does this mean to you? Why is this important to you? And always, and hence this gift that I've chosen, find a quiet place to conduct the interviews. Whilst working from home, that hasn't always been possible, certainly not for me. But try and find a quiet place with as few distractions as possible. Okay. And always remember, practice does make perfect. When I began doing my interviews, I used to practice on family members in order to try and improve my skills, because interviews are more than just asking the questions, it's about listening and probing as well. Before any interviews that I do now, with any telephone interviews, what I do is practice in my head as well. So I almost anticipate some of the responses that may come and consider how I will react to them. So always practice makes perfect, as with everything really. Okay, so there is, beyond your interviews and your focus groups, you do also have your visual methodologies that can be used with your audience to get an understanding of their thoughts and feelings, and what comes to their minds when they see these images. So for example, what comes to your mind when you see a poster about cancer screening? Now this can be positive, it can be negative. Again, it's then the researcher's responsibility to delve into the why. And there's no issues in regards to combining this with, say, other methods like an interview. So you can invoke those feelings and memories and information. Different layers of meaning can be discovered by using this method. So for example, if we had a photograph, that may trigger some interesting topics or conversations which may not have been the case without the photographs. Okay, so here's something I did. So the researcher in this instance, I found a poster of a Netflix series called Daredevil, and I was interested in how they portrayed disabled people. And in the media, often disabled people are portrayed in a negative light. So I discussed how this poster portrays them in a positive light. But the researcher doesn't always have to be the person who's interpreting these visuals. It can be the participant. So for example, you could ask the participant to go out and pick a picture, or to go out with a camera, take some pictures, and then what you do is ask them, what does this mean to you? Why did you select this? Can you explain what meaning you ascribe to this picture? And again, you're delving deeper into their minds and getting into their experiences, motivations, beliefs, opinions. So remember, qualitative methods isn't just your interviews and focus groups. They also include your visual methods as well. And as well, you have your open-ended surveys. This is a form some of you may be familiar with. So this is the feedback form for everyone who's received a grant. And what you can see here is that it's full of open-ended questions, allowing you to expand on your experiences and what you have done. So you're asked to describe the events that you've organized. You're asked to what worked well, rather than asking, did it work? You asked what worked well. So you're asked to elaborate. And that is pretty much qualitative research, that level of elaboration that you can obtain from the research method you choose. Okay, so once you have collected your information via this research methods, we do want to look at analysis. Okay, so whereas with quantitative methods, it's a lot easier because it's numbers and you're just looking at which number is bigger than the other, what rank is, or how can you categorize this. With qualitative data, it isn't as straightforward. So with qualitative data, once you have collected all of your data, you need to consider what themes are present, whether they are common across different groups of participants or whether they are distinct. And what does this tell us about the community or the people that are giving you these answers? So, for example, this session was engaging because it was conducted in a specific language or made use of visual aids. That is a theme. And another theme that popped in from our interviews that we did was deprivation and how that is affecting one's willingness to go to a cancer screening. And use those quotes, how does that reflect this theme and what does this mean? What does this mean for the person, their health, their community, and what can we do with this? So analysis for qualitative data isn't always straightforward and it is open to interpretation, but that interpretation is the strength in a sense, in that it has so much meaning and so much value. Okay, so if we go back to our earlier worked example, where a group of quantitative researchers were interested in which group of women are attending their smear tests and which aren't, we found it was the 25 to 34-year-olds who were the least likely to go for their smear test. We didn't know why they were missing them. So what we then did was use these qualitative methods, your interviews, for example, and we asked them. And when we asked them, what we found was that it hurt, or they were too busy, or something like the receptionist wasn't nice, or I didn't like feeling exposed. What is significant about these is that they have practical applications. We can make change now following these findings. So for example, the receptionist wasn't nice. So what we could do is look at trying to train the receptionist. I don't want a man to do it. We can make it a lot more aware that it doesn't have to be a man if you don't want it to be. So these findings do have a lot of practical applications. When we do collect our research, we have to be conscious of the fact that we can't collect research from every single person within the community. It's just not possible nor practical. So we need a sample. And when it comes to a sample, we need a sample that's representative of that community. So for example, if you do research with a BME community, then you need a sample that is representative of BME people. And not just BME people in the sense that it's one or two people from that community who live close to our friends. That wider community, how many people can you obtain from that community to get a clearer picture of that community? So with the sample as well, it will be dependent on what method you choose. The rule of thumb is that quantitative research does need more participants than your qualitative research. So for example, in the space of doing one interview, you may be able to collect 10 questionnaires, maybe even more. So the rule of thumb is quantitative research does need more participants than your qualitative research. Okay. When it comes to recruitment as well, consider the possibility of expanding this sample as much as possible. Use the snowball effect to bring in participants, ask them to see if they can bring in any more people, or make use of opportunistic sampling where you ask the people that are there, that are present. So I have stood outside shopping centres before, supermarkets, libraries, and asked people to take part in my research. Obviously, that may not be possible right now, but take advantage of any opportunity you have to recruit a large sample as possible. And another way to do that is advertising. So some of you may be familiar with this email that was sent by my colleague Niga, where we were recruiting people for our telephone interviews. You can also have posters. So if you received grants from us, you can use those grants to print out posters and disseminate them. Alternatively, use social media, telephone calls, anything that you can make use of. And try and incentivize it if you're not getting as many people as you wanted. Could be that vouchers, or something as simple as sandwiches if you're able to do a face-to-face interview as well. So that's your recruitment. So once we've recruited our sample, we've collected our research, we've analysed the research, what we then need to do is report our findings. So when we're presenting our findings, we need to highlight what we have done, why we did it, how we did it, what you found, what your conclusions are, and what is significant about this. You can report your findings back to Answer Cancer, so you can use the feedback forms that I showed earlier around report, but you can also write your report yourself. You can write a report in regards to what I mentioned earlier about why you did it, how you did it, what you found. And then the report you can send to Answer Cancer, you can disseminate that further as well, help others learn from what you found, you know, spread it across your website, social media, whatever it is, try and spread what you have found. But it doesn't necessarily always have to be a report. So it can be a community gathering or a conference. It can be a webinar like this. Present your findings, let others learn, and if ever needed, try and incentivize it if you can, or if it's ever possible. And always remember, the good people of Answer Cancer, as you can see here, are always present to give you bespoke support. So that can relate to data collection, analysis, or report writing. Unfortunately, we won't be able to say write your report for you, but we can certainly read through it. Or if you want us to have a look at something that you set up online, say for example a questionnaire, certainly look into that for you. Some of the support that we can provide can be via one-to-one support, so that could be myself. We could provide online resources such as YouTube videos, tailor-made support, and so if there's a few people that want to know a certain thing, then we can certainly look into that for you. But also communities of practice, and where community of practice would involve all of you. So this would be a research community of practice. We'd ask you to join in and we'd learn from each other. And if anyone new came, they'd learn from the community of practice, and we'd learn and we'd network and we'd increase our knowledge. So that is available for you if you ever need it. We will develop this, we are developing it rather. So it could be something like a Facebook group or something like Slack at the moment. But if the restrictions ease and it's safe to do so, we could even have gatherings maybe once a month where we meet up, have a drink or something and just talk. So that is always available for you. Okay, so in terms of this then, I have been talking for a little while now and I want to see what you remember. So we'll have our final quiz for today. Again, just another 5 questions, and using the comments box if you want to post your answers there. So again, hands on your metaphorical buzzers. Question 1. Recording the total number of people who attended a cancer awareness session is a form of which research method? Is it A, qualitative, B, quantitative, C, all of the above, or D, none of the above? Perfect. I think everyone's answered there now. So the answer is B, quantitative. Well done if you got that one right. Question 2. Bringing a group of people together, so around 6 to 10, and asking them questions is a form of which qualitative research method? Is A, diary keeping, B, interview, C, photography, D, focus groups? Okay, I think we've got a few responses there. So the answer was D, focus groups. Next question. How can you present your research findings? So A, in a report, B, at a conference, C, an online webinar, or D, all of the above? I think we got quite a few responses there again. So the answer was D. Well done if you got those right. Next question, true or false? Quality of research is interested in numbers. A for true, B for false. Okay. So the answer this time was B. Well done. I think everyone got that one right this time. And finally, recording of videos is not a form of quantitative research. So the answer this time was A. It's a bit of a trick question, this one, because recording videos is a form of qualitative research, so it's not a form of quantitative. Bit of a trick question there. But well done to everyone. I think most questions were answered correctly there. Okay, so gonna sort of summarize what we spoke about today. We are coming to the end of our allotted time. And I'm going to use this metaphor of a toolbox to summarize what we spoke about today. So I want everyone to consider research is about the evidence that we can provide for the questions we ask, and that there are various research methodologies and ways to collect data. All have their strengths, but they all have limitations as well. You also got to consider that ethics is of vital importance. When you are collecting research, you will need a sample, as it won't be possible to conduct research with the entire community. And as such, consider what we discussed today as your personal toolbox. There are different challenges that you'll face, different questions that you'll need answers to, and as such, you'll have different tools available to you to answer these. And it's a matter of choosing the best tool that works for you. And also the tool you use can be the research method, or could be the bespoke support. So I could be the tool if you need to be. So that is the summary. I will hand over to Elizabeth just to have a quick discussion about our plans. You're on mute, Elizabeth. You're just on mute, Elizabeth.
It happens all the time, things like that. Thank you, Khalid, thank you, and apologies for that. So let me just get this back up. So at Answer Cancer, we like everyone who takes part in our training to make a plan, either to share their learning with others or make a plan to develop their own skills and knowledge further, to take what they've learned today into their wider communities and into their lives. So here's how we'll do it anyway. So on screen there's a number of bullet points with suggestions for plans. So some of you may have done this before if you've done our Answer Cancer training before, or you've been to any of our stakeholder events. This is something we like to do throughout all our learning. So if you've done it before, please still join in and do it again. And for those of you who are new, just join in, okay? So on screen, there's a number of bullet points with suggestions for plans. So have a look, take a moment to look at them. You don't have to do any of these. You can make up your own, be as creative as you like, or keep it as simple as you like. The choice is yours. So here's how we're going to produce our plan. We're going to do it in real time, and we've created an online form for you to use, and you can access it in two ways. So for anyone using a laptop and with access to a smartphone, you can simply open up your camera in your phone and point it at the QR code on screen, and make sure you position it with all four corners of the code in view, and it should open up into a website form. So if any of you got a smartphone to hand, you could do that now. And for anyone who's using a smartphone and a bit more old school, they can click on the link on screen. So Khaled, I don't know if you've put the link in the chat box. Okay. So now we've decided how we'll do it. We'll do it together. Okay, don't worry about leaving me on this page. You can always come back to me once you've done it, and you should be able to hear my voice throughout. So we want everybody who can join in to join in at this part, please. So now you should be in you should have opened up the plan form and be on the first page. So the first bit is some blurb about how we store your information and what the plan will be used for. It also explains how we'll contact you again in 1 or 2 months' time to see how you're getting on. So that's if you want us to and you give us permission to. So please click OK once you've read it. Next up's your name, your email address, and what date you came on training. It should open up on today's date, which is the 12th of the 8th. So click next when you're done. And the next screen, what you're planning to do as a result of today. So if you've managed to think of a plan, write your plan in there. If at this moment you feel a little bit pressurised and can't really do it, don't worry, you can always come back to this page after Khaled's finished up with the rest of his training. But if you're managing to do it and you've got a plan to hand, put it in there. Then it's like, when will you do it? Well, I normally follow up people within 1 to 2 months' time. So if you give yourself like 1 to 2 months' time, when I follow you up, we'll have an idea of where you're up to with your plans then. And then what you hope to happen as a result, so write that. On the next screen, it says, are you happy to be contacted? So that'd be great if you tick yes, because it means we can follow up your progress and report back to our commissioners to show that the Answer Cancer message is getting out there into the wider communities where it needs to be. And we can report back the success of the training and that you've used it and the context of which you've used it. Our own research, if you would. Click next when you're done and finish, and that's it. I'll give you like a minute to complete it, but if you're not managing to complete it, you can always just leave it there on the screen that's open and come back to the main session and complete it when we finish. Or alternatively, if you've not managed to do it in this session, Khaled, when he sends out his follow-up email with his slide decks on and any supporting information that you need to have to hand, he can always include the link there then for you to do it in your own time. Okay, so that's it. So, but please do it, because it's an important way to show that how Answer Cancer staff and the training is used and useful, and it's how we demonstrate our impact to our commissioner. So please do use it. So that's it, Khaled. Thank you very much. Back to you. So thank you. Bye now. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Elizabeth.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Due to time, I will just carry on going to the questions, if that's okay. So you can continue doing the plans after the session, then the links will be available in the follow-up email, as Elizabeth said. So if I hand over to Adrian, any questions for me?
Hi, Khaled. Hi, everybody else. Thank you for your questions. Yes, we did get some questions for you, Khaled. So in order that they were asked, first question, can you explain data protection in research? That's from Mina.
Yeah, absolutely. So with data protection, it does go hand in hand with ethics in a sense. So matter of maintaining confidentiality, for example. But again, it's always worth, if you're part of an organization, checking your policy around data protection. But it is always good practice to maintain confidentiality. If you collect any questionnaires with on paper, for example, that you dispose of them carefully, and anything that you have, you protect, you save, you maintain people's identity. So the general principles of data protections apply in the form of ethics and research.
Very good, yeah. And I mean, just to add to that one, I suppose there were kind of the additional thing to consider is obviously all the data would be covered under the GDPR requirements as well. So they set out a number of different principles. You should only collect the data that you're going to use. You should kind of keep it confidential as well, and you should kind of store it appropriately as well. The thing that we are checking out at the moment, and this is I think this kind of might be one of your questions which you asked outside of the webinar, which was around data control and data processing. So if you're obviously collecting data for yourself, and that's part of your group or your organization, then you will be what's called the data processor and the data controller. So the data is kind of yours. And the thing that we are currently looking into for Answer Cancer is that difference where we will ask you to collect data for us. So in that instance, we would be the data controllers and you would be the data processor. So that means you would still be required to follow GDPR laws, but what it would mean is where you are collecting data on our behalf for Answer Cancer, then it looks like we would be the ultimate accountable organization. So I wonder if that's kind of part of that question as well. So hopefully that answers that one. Next good question for you, Khaled. If we want to translate interview questions in community languages, what are the rules to become qualified for research? So are there any specific issues around translating interview questions in community languages?
Not so much. So one thing you need to consider is that you're still maintaining the confidentiality and maintaining the ethics and data protection regulations. There isn't anything to stop you from becoming qualified for research. I think everyone can be qualified for research. So if you did an interview in, say, a different language from English, that is still research, and that is made you qualified for research. So there isn't anything that's stopping you there. But if you, for example, use a translator maybe during an interview, you have to consider, are they maintaining the confidentiality? What have you done to protect the anonymity of your participant? So again, I think that does kind of fit in with the previous question of maintaining the confidentiality. It might be that, you know, if you're the researcher and you're doing the translation, it's a lot more simpler. Whereas if you brought in a translator, you have to consider, is their anonymity protected as well as it should be? And what can you do? Is there any policies or anything like that that you can protect? There will be, because I think if you go to say see a GP and you had an interpreter, they still maintain confidentiality. So it's always worth checking who they are and what policies they have around keeping that confidentiality.
Brilliant. Yeah, good answer. Good answer there, Khaled. Next question. What's a good number of participants for qualitative and for quantitative research? So what should our sample size be?
Sure. So in terms of that, there isn't really a fixed number. The rule of thumb simply is that qualitative research needs less people than quantitative. And it pretty much be, if you have a sample that is representative of that community, whatever number that may be, that is enough. Always the higher the number, the more information you are able to collect. But it's a matter of sample size. So if you have a smaller community, with maybe 100 or so people, you don't need 100 responses. 10 could be enough if you feel that they are from different parts of that said community. So there isn't a fixed figure. When it comes to quantitative, there is normally around a percentage and a formula to work out, which is more in terms of academic research and not necessarily within community research. But it's depending on when you feel you have a representative sample of your community, that is when you have a fix. That's the best figure for you.
And probably another kind of useful practical tip as well. Consider, so it's that balance between what you've got in terms of resource, so that's kind of largely time and expertise as well. So you're always going to balance what you want to do with what you can do in terms of your available resource. And then the useful thing I think of is think about a cross-section as well. So your resource might not allow you to do huge numbers, but like, for example, in Answer Cancer, one of the things we will do is if you like, a cross-section. So we'll almost do what I kind of practically describe as a diagonal slice, so that we get, we try to get some representation from across our different stakeholders. So that's another way of thinking about trying to get a good balance as well. So good question, good answer, really good answer, Khaled. Next question. This is a toughie. It's a good one. Ethnicity is not registered during screening. So the screening programs, the cancer screening programs, don't consistently record ethnicity of people going for their screens. Is there another way to find out screening updates about different BA/ME groups? So, yeah.
So that is a tough one. I think, I'm not completely sure on this one, but if you look on the Cancer Research UK website, I think they do report some figures around certain ethnicities. I might not be correct on that one, so don't quote me there. But I think certain websites, so maybe it's BAME-specific organizations, maybe your best route there. But you are right, if that data is not collected, we won't know for sure. The other option is your own research, your primary research then. So something like equal ops data, you can collect the ethnicities and then compare that. Obviously, the equal ops is something that's anonymous, so you might not have you might end up doing an interview, but you won't know who gave you that equal ops. But it's trying to make it fit as best as possible, I guess, in a situation like this. So yeah, it is a tough one, and I think I will look into this a bit more. I don't know if Adrian, if you have anything to add on that.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of touched on it kind of quite well there. So primary care. So in terms of cervical screening, no routine collection of data there across this kind of screening one, and similarly for breast or for kind of bowel programs, and it's kind of a big problem. It makes things more difficult for us at Answer Cancer when we are looking at data, which can be quite difficult to get at the best of times. So I think kind of what you're kind of referring to in terms of the CRUK ethnicity data, then CRUK, the pages definitely have a lot of information around and kind of research around the different risks and incidences, for example, of cancer across different groups. But in terms of hard data, for example, screening data around breast in Tameside is one example. It's not routinely reported. So the ways to get around that, none of which are kind of really that practical. Well, one is slightly more. So when we get hold of that data, it tends to come from individual audits. So for example, where an audit has taken place across primary care. So it might be that from time to time a practice has carried out an audit. So literally it's a manual or a press of a button trawl through patient records to try and kind of match up a screening code with an ethnicity code where that's been recorded. It should be recorded, but you have to do an audit trail to bring them together. So it depends upon the practice having done that. Your ability to influence that as individual cancer champions or cancer champion groups will be really limited, but it's possible. It's worthwhile contacting a local practice. The other way, and it's a bit of a rubbish way, is to think of it. So if there's one particular practice in your area which is very fully used by particular communities, so it might be known as, that's a practice which is predominantly BME communities. You might think of it as a bit of a proxy measure. It's a rubbish way of kind of putting one thing on top of another thing and therefore assuming that gives you a proxy measure for BME communities, because there'll be all sorts of other factors in there, but it's possible. So to give you an example, in Salford, there are a number of practices that tend to be used by Jewish communities. if we went to look at the individual screening kind of rates at those communities, it might give us an indication at best at kind of some of the Jewish communities' uptake of screening. So you can kind of see that's a bit rubbish. It's not very, it's not that scientific. At best, it would be a really loose proxy. So can't help too much, I'm afraid. But we are digging at that, and the systems are supposed to be getting better. And I think, Khalid, those really good questions were the questions. So thank you, everybody, for those.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone. But yeah, I think that last question, I think personally, I will actually look into that a bit more because it is quite interesting. But again, thanks for all those questions. Just conscious of time, so we will just wrap it up. But I'll just remind everyone.
You've just got one more question from Barbara in the chat. Okay. Sorry, Khalid. It says, do we register with the ICO?
So I was just about to type an answer to Barbara there for that one. I was just literally about to say that'll kind of, so the answer to that will just kind of depend upon kind of circumstances. So that one's probably better answered outside of here in a little bit more detail. So we've got your question, Barbara. We'll come back to it and we'll send that answer out to everybody just in terms of time as well and getting a bit more information.
Perfect. So again, thanks for that, guys. So I just want to wrap up quickly. So before we do, just want to remind everyone that today was more or less an introduction into research and evaluation. We will be looking to do a more in-depth version later on in the year or in the future at some point. So just keep an eye on our training opportunities. Research evaluation is so important and so key and actually really fun when you get to grips with it. So they are all available, so keep an eye on our website for further opportunities as well as other training opportunities beyond training. Also our communities of practice, which we will be developing quite soon. Do join them. Do invite others who may be interested. For now, that will likely be virtual, but once we are able to, hopefully we'll be able to meet at some point. So again, thank you so much for listening today. If you have any further questions at all, I am, following today's session that you haven't thought of right now, I am happy to answer them, or the team are happy to answer them. And you'll get my contact details through the follow-up emails. So thank you so much again, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day, guys.